Hello, welcome to Tael Talk. I'm Tael, and today I'd like to talk to you about a little so-called classic for the original Game Boy. This of course being Donkey Kong Land. So Donkey Kong Land was originally released in 1995 for the original Game Boy, so it was 1 year after Donkey Kong Country, and the same year as Donkey Kong Country 2 came out. But it was recently released on the Virtual Console for the 3DS. Now obviously I don't have the ability to capture Virtual Console footage, but I thought since it was coming out, it's actually funny, I actually just bought the Donkey Kong Land trilogy for the Game Boy, for the original Game Boy, about a week before this was announced for the European Virtual Console, and because I am an Australian, I have a European 3DS, so I actually had the ability to download these games, but I'm kind of glad I got them for the Game Boy, because I obviously recorded this video through a Game Boy player on the GameCube, and that's definitely the way I'd prefer to play those games, and I'll explain why very soon. Okay, so I used to rent this game a lot as a kid. I think many of us did, if you could rent Game Boy games at your local video store like we could. And I always enjoyed it, but I never loved it anywhere near as much as the second one, which was actually the very first video game that I owned, and I'll be covering the two sequels later on. But I think what a lot of people were expecting with Donkey Kong Land was for it to be a port of the original Donkey Kong Country. But it really wasn't. The sequels were more like ports, although still not quite, but they were definitely more like ports than this one. Donkey Kong Land was actually much more of like a sequel to Donkey Kong Country than it was a port, and there's quite a few reasons for this. First of all, it contained all new enemies, which was kind of cool actually. And there was also some new areas, such as a mountainous area and urban environment. And there was even new music. These are all things that there's none of in the following Donkey Kong Land games after this. So it's worth noting, a lot of these new areas and features are actually pretty cool. So the most apparent, and probably the one that holds up the best, is the music. So Grant Cocope, actually, who many of you might know from the Banjo-Kazooie series in Donkey Kong 64, he actually got the task of porting all of David Wire's and the other people's music from Donkey Kong Country into Donkey Kong Land, and interestingly, he added some tracks of his own. The music that plays in the underwater temple is probably my favorite additional track for the series, but the music that he did add to this game, or to this series in general, is all really good, and the job that he did converting the pre-existing music to the Game Boy's limited hardware is also really impressive. Likewise, a lot of the new enemies are quite clever. Hogwash being an example. He's a flying pig, and there's some other ones like these bell things that are in the underwater temples, and some other new enemies that are all actually quite interesting, and they would have been just easily at home in the original Donkey Kong Country as they are here. Something else that the game did that the original Donkey Kong Country didn't is the game added a lot of verticality to its level design. Now the original Donkey Kong Country, a lot of it, like using the first stage for example, it's just you running from the left to the right in pretty much a straight line with some little hills in that here, but that's about it. And the entire game's like that. There's very little verticality to any of the level design. Now I think because they were working on Donkey Kong Country 2 at the time that they were developing this, Donkey Kong Country 2 of course had a lot of those levels where you were actually climbing up the hardships and masts and ropes and that sort of thing. And so I think they took elements of that and actually brought it to Donkey Kong Land, which is interesting because Donkey Kong Land obviously came out first, but I think that introduction of verticality to the level design there kind of prepped people for what was to follow in Donkey Kong Country 2, and I always didn't really think about it back then, but looking back at it now, I think that's quite interesting. Something else this game did that the other Donkey Kong Lands don't let you do is actually ride the animal buddies. Now you only get two, which is kind of sad. You get Rambi and Espresso, but the fact that you actually get to ride them around instead of just becoming them, as you do in the sequels, is actually pretty cool. And you know, to be honest, I think it's actually pretty impressive that they got that working on the Game Boy. It's quite impressive indeed. It also has bosses that feel more creative than any of the bosses in Donkey Kong Country. I think this is because the original Donkey Kong Country just put you in like the same background arena of, you know, piles of bananas, and the bosses weren't particularly interesting, whereas in this, the bosses still aren't anything amazing, but there tends to be a little bit more strategy involved to them, except for this flying stingray. It's pretty easy. But, you know, it was another nice little improvement, and that again is something that was more of in Donkey Kong Country 2, so I don't know if they were testing a lot of these ideas, or if they were retrofitted from Donkey Kong Country 2 while it was in development. But I still think that that's incredibly interesting. And of course there is the urban environment, which is, I believe, is a big tribute to the original Donkey Kong arcade game, because there's a few levels that really have the same sort of textural patterns that you would expect to find in something that's a tribute to that game. And I think that was a really, really nice nod, and they're actually some of the best levels in the game, possibly because they were built specifically for the Game Boy and weren't based off the Super Nintendo game. But unfortunately, that's where a lot of the positive things about this game end. And going back to this game now, there's really a lot more negative things that I feel are with the game than there is positive. So the first is a bit of a thing that I guess people can argue. This wasn't an issue for me, of course, playing this on the Game Boy player for the GameCube, but playing this on the original Game Boy, the graphics are actually detailed to a fault. So what they've done here is they have tried to get all of the Super Nintendo graphics and just crush them and cram them into the Game Boy. So of course, going from something as lush and beautiful as a Super Nintendo game and converting that into 4 colors, you're going to end up with some problems. And the main problem that you end up with here is that the graphics are so detailed that the characters and enemies quite often get completely lost in the backgrounds. This can lead to a lot of cheap deaths, obviously, and frustrating gameplay. So it's good playing it on the Game Boy player, because this is no longer an issue, because obviously the characters are very bright and different color to the background. But if you were to play this on the eShop or the original Game Boy, it's definitely a problem that stands out quite frequently throughout the game. It's a lot more noticeable in the levels that are based on the Super Nintendo game than it is a lot of the levels that were made specifically for the Game Boy. But it's definitely still there, and it is an issue that was ironed out in the second game. Likewise, in order to fit it into the Game Boy cartridge, a lot of sacrifices were made to the animation. So the animation feels a lot choppier and disjointed, and it also glitches out a lot. And that kind of takes away from the smoothness that a lot of people remember from Donkey Kong Country. A lot of that's gone, which is quite unfortunate. And something that is interesting is they managed to cram the entire Donkey Kong Country engine into the Game Boy, but I don't think it was particularly well optimized, because playing as either Donkey or Diddy, it feels very, very slow, and it feels like it handles very, very slow. And jumping is just, it's like jumping in low gravity. Now, the only time that this isn't the case is when you jump on the head of an enemy, and then all of a sudden the characters speed up crazy fast and makes it really hard to control, and it's quite easy to jump on an enemy's head and then fall down a hole because of this. It's really, really weird, and I don't know how it got through playtesting, to be honest. Likewise, the hitboxes on these enemies can also be terribly off, and they can lead to a lot of cheap deaths as well. It's just one of those things where the engine, they got it working in Donkey Kong Land, but they didn't get it working well, and thankfully in Donkey Kong Land 2 they ironed out all of these issues, but definitely here, it should feel like Donkey Kong, and you can tell it's trying its best to feel like Donkey Kong. It doesn't quite get there. Now, something that's a bit of a catch-22 with this game, I kind of like this idea, I like elements of this idea, but I don't like the way they implemented it. This is the only Donkey Kong game where you could save after every single level up until Donkey Kong Country Returns came out on the Wii. And I like that a lot, because I hate that in the Donkey Kong Country games you have to try to marathon all these levels to get to get to Wrinkly's Save Cave or whatever, and pay up the 2 coins. I always hated that system in Donkey Kong Country 2, and I didn't like it in Donkey Kong Country 3 either. This game saves after every stage, but in order to save, you have to get every single Kong letter. So that's the catch. So sometimes, you could be on your last life and you could complete a level, but if you haven't got all those Kong letters, that's too bad. If you die in the next level, you have to replay the previous one. So I like that it gives you the option of saving after every level, but there are some levels where I honestly couldn't find all of the Kong letters. Generally, they're pretty easily thrown about, but definitely later towards the game, they get quite well hidden, and it's almost like punishing people by not allowing them to save by hiding these things, and I'm really, really not into that. I'm assuming that the reason that they implemented this system was because they didn't have enough storage for the candy save station the original Donkey Kong Country had, but I'm not entirely sure, and I could be wrong. Something else that kind of bugs me, it bugged me a lot actually. In fact, I'd go so far as to say this is my most hated stage in the game. There's this stage where you're in the clouds, and you're on this platform, and this platform will change directions whenever it hits a wall. It's on a track, and that's fair enough, that's a great way of navigating a level, and there have been levels like this in the original Donkey Kong Country, and that's a nice mechanic like that. What's wrong with it is every time you jump, every time your character lands, it also changes direction as though it's just hit a wall. This isn't a weird bug or a glitch, this was a deliberate gameplay choice for this stage, and it is honestly one of the most frustratingly poorly designed levels in probably the entire Donkey Kong series, all the way from Donkey Kong Country and Land, way up to Tropical Freeze. I think this is the most poorly designed and frustrating level in the entirety of the franchise, to be completely honest. I honestly don't know how anyone thought this was a good idea or it was fun. It's not. This level will drive you insane, and I believe I finished the game in a little bit over 2 hours, and I think at least 30 minutes of that 2 hours was spent on this particular stage. It's very frustrating. The other problems I have with this game are things like K. Rool being a complete pushover. He basically acts the same way as he does in Donkey Kong Country, but you have to jump on him far less times, but that's okay, it's the Game Boy, I wouldn't expect it to be exactly the same. And likewise, there's no character credits, which that always bums me out. One of my favourite things about Donkey Kong Country, I wanted it introduced, and I wish a lot of other games did it, was that they had the cast of characters when you beat K. Rool before the credits, and I always thought that was really cool. And they have it in the second and third Donkey Kong Land games as well, but this one unfortunately just cuts straight to black with the credits, and that's kind of disappointing to me. I'd love to know who these characters are without having to shell out for a manual on eBay. But really, that pretty much sums up Donkey Kong Land. This is a pretty long video for such a small, short Game Boy game, but there you go. There was definitely potential here, but it wasn't quite reached. But Rare did take what they learned from this game, and the development issues they had with it, and they did apply all of it to Donkey Kong Land 2, which made Donkey Kong Land 2 a much, much, much superior game, and I will get to that. But in general, is this game worth picking up now? If you can get it for what I did, which was I got all three of the games for $3 each with free shipping on eBay, if you can get it for that sort of price, it's worth it, but is it worth the $6 it is on the eShop, or I've seen it go up to $20 on eBay? No, definitely not. This game's nostalgic, yes, but it's not great, and I can't really recommend it. Definitely not in the same way I can recommend the sequels. Anyway, what are your memories of Donkey Kong Land? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and thank you again for tuning in to Tael Talks. It's been a pleasure, and I'll catch you next time.